today's board subcommittee meeting on January 23rd. It looks like we have 7 items up for consideration. And I like to just take it in order in the way that I got it in a memo. So the first one that's up for consideration is the board policy on conflict of interest. And I was looking at the proposed revisions that are in bold, and I've noticed, Crystal, you just added a few positions that you want included under the conflict of interest policy.
Well, just for clarification, they're not mine. I send this over to Human Resources and they contact the county. And then Leanne and I go through all of the title changes for certain positions and any new positions that we've added. Like, for example, the assistant vice president for LARC, and she works with the county to come up with the disclosure categories. Then she gives it back to me and then I make the bold instructions.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I try not to make stuff up. I try to have the experts tell me what to do.
Well, creativity is not a bad characteristic, Crystal. If you
But I try not to lie.
So did HR and a few other managers, I know if there is a revision to a title, I can see you change vice president.
Trustee Pong, I'm sorry. We need to actually start the agenda in order. You need to do the call to order as well as the
roll call.
Yeah, the roll call, public comment on non-agenda items. And
oh, yes. Oh, thank you. Here is the agenda. Okay. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and do the call to order. Trustee Martin.
Yeah, I'm here.
And Trustee Gibson.
Here.
Trustee Chan.
Here.
Okay, and I am here. Are there any public comments on non-agenda items?
No public comments were received.
Okay, we have the minutes of October 5th that need to be approved. Do we have a motion to approve?
I don't think I was at that meeting, right? So I don't think I can.
I'll move to approve.
Okay. That's funny. I could have sworn I saw you. Okay, but I'll second that.
Oh, you put it up. Thank you. Was I there? I can't. I was there. Okay.
Oh, how about that?
Again, because I don't have access to anything you're seeing other than what you're putting up on the screen. So I'm going to appreciate people keeping things up on the screen. Well, then I can second it.
Okay.
But
all right.
Can you show the minutes again, please? Just give it a quick review. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Let's go ahead and take the roll call to approve the agenda. Trustee Gibson.
Yeah, aye.
Trustee Chan.
Abstain. I was in the meeting.
Okay. Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Okay. And I am an aye. So that carries. All right. Let's take a look at the board by law 2710, the conflict of interest. So Crystal was saying that there were some positions where you're revising the job title, but in these other ones, are you adding these positions into the conflict of interest policy?
That's correct. I work with HR, Leanne Flashberg, and we go through everything. She talks to the county. We look at all the new positions, and she gives me the ones that needed to be added.
Can you? I need you to share the document so I can at least
sure
see it. Because it's my only way to see it is if you share it.
Yeah, okay.
Can I ask you, Crystal, when was the last time the conflict of interest policy was actually revised? Because there's no date on the document.
I believe the last time I looked at this was either 2019 or 2020, but let me be 100% sure for you. This is one I actually review on a pretty relatively regular basis. Because there are always changes in positions we're adding and subtracting and changing, but let me take a quick look and I'll tell you exactly when we did it last. So the last time we reviewed it was May 20th of 2020.
May of 2020. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, good. All right. Okay.
So yes, there were additions to this because we now have a Title IX coordinator and we have a director of operations for economic and workforce development. So anything you see in bold were positions, also the associate vice president for diversity, equity, inclusion. They have been added in 2020 or in that time frame, and so we had to add them in.
I see that. Okay.
And we no longer have an assistant superintendent, senior vice president for non-credit and offsite, so we took that one off.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
My one comment is, I think the gift limit for the Form 700, I think it changed recently and it went up. And so my one recommendation is, because this is a legal document, not so much just a internal governance policy, it's actually grounded in the government code, that we have legal counsel just do a look at this to make sure that it is in compliance with the government code.
What's the new limit?
I think it's in the 500 range. So this policy, it says 470, but I think I read somewhere that it increased. So I just want to make sure that the document is accurate.
Well, I can certainly have Leanne check that out with the county for me. She calls them directly and asks for the information, and that's who we filed the Form 700 with. So I can have her check that out
Okay.
and let you know if there's been a change to that dollar amount.
Okay, that'll be great. All right. Yeah. Oh, you see, it uses the word $50 too. I think that's been changed.
Okay, we'll check all the amounts.
What I'm curious is if the $50 goes more than the Rose Parade tickets.
No, I think that was a little bit less, actually.
'Cause that's my big gift every time is the Rose Parade tickets. So whatever the value of those were, and I usually end up giving them to somebody, but if I can't make it, but if I'd kind of like to know, yeah, and I don't remember seeing them to remember even how much they were. I know they're pretty expensive. It's a great show too, by the way, but.
All right. We'll check on the viability of the Rose Parade tickets.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. You know, there's actually a section in this policy about tickets too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I think if you're going to ask the county, maybe the county, are you referring to LA County or which?
Yeah,
county?
that's whoever she calls to get this updated for me. I'll talk to her. We'll go through it and make sure that we have all the right amounts.
Yeah, maybe the county has a model conflict of interest policy, or I assume they update theirs, and then we can, maybe if you show it to me, I can kind of compare it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm quickly reading this and I don't think the Rose Parade tickets are exempt,
Yeah, I
but
don't think so either from what I'm reading.
because I'm not doing too much official.
Ceremonial?
Yeah, not much. So I don't mind listening it. That's just the one standard I have. It's the Rose Parade ticket. Can't think of anything else. Anyway.
Okay, we'll check it out.
Okay. So we'll bring this policy back at a subsequent meeting.
No problem.
Okay, sounds good. Item number 2, I see item number 2 board policy 2740, board education.
I haven't made any changes to this. You
Oh.
folks discussed this last time and had some ideas about what you wanted added.
Was this policy brought up at the last meeting?
Board education in general was brought up, and I let you know that we actually had a board bylaw on this. And so you asked to look at it to see if it was inclusive enough of the training you thought you needed.
I think maybe Trustee Gibson had mentioned that. Is that right, Trustee Gibson?
Yeah, we went over some wording on it, so that's reflects the this version, I believe, is based on the discussion we had last time.
Okay. Well, I did get a chance to look at the accreditation standard on this. And
Can you slide down again, please? Thank you.
so I did see the accreditation. I got a chance to look at the accreditation standards on board education. And well, first of all, it is the accreditation standard. It is Roman numeral 4.C. And it's very vague. And it basically says that the board will have some training, but it doesn't give any type of specifics. It says the board has an ongoing training program for board development and new member orientation. And that's all it says. So community college has a lot of discretion as to what they would like to put in a board education policy. And it looks like this is a policy that goes to a lot of it deals with new trustee orientation, which, has already passed. I'm thinking we should table this until you have another trustee orientation.
But wouldn't it make sense to have something in place for in the eventuality of a new trustee arriving, rather than waiting until that occurs?
Well, that won't be for several years. And so maybe this is something that could
What
be.
if I resign and step down? Then you'll need somebody new.
That sounds like a threat.
Well, I'm feeling like we spent some time going over the wording and looking over it, and I'm the one that requested that we have put some more attention into board orientation. So that's why I'm pushing it.
Well, actually, in looking at this policy, a lot of the things that are in here we did not do. And so if in practice we are not doing what's in writing, you either conform to the written document or you change the document to conform what most people would normally do, because you have to comply with whatever policy that you write. And there are many things here that we did not do. And so I'd rather table this or to have a study session for the full board so we can get some ideas from them as to how they would like to see new trustee orientation.
It's okay with me.
Yeah, I don't have any problems here.
Okay.
But if I resign, you'll be in trouble.
Okay, that's that. You're threatening more than once now, Trustee Gibson. Trustee Chan, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, yeah, it sounds good to me. Go over it in the study session.
You're kind of open to the idea of having a study session with all board members and to get their collective ideas as to what they would like to see in a new trustee orientation?
Yeah, especially because I wasn't in the trustee orientation. I came mid-year through semester. So I would just like to see more information.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. I'd like to make a recommendation that the committee recommends that the board have a study session. And maybe it could be the subject of a retreat as to what they would like to see in a new trustee orientation, the type of topics. The orientation would include the training. I noticed this policy references the Brown Act. I also think it should include ethics training, conflict of interest training, training on PCC college governance and constituent groups, and to try to get some ideas. And then we could put together, get their ideas from the rest of the board, and then we can revise the policy, and then it meets the needs of the board. How does that sound? Yeah. Okay. All right. So would you like, I can make a motion to put this in abeyance and to make a recommendation that we would like to have a study session with the full board.
I'll second.
Okay. All right. Any comments? All right. All right. I will do a roll call vote. Trustee Martin.
Aye.
Okay. Trustee Chan.
Aye.
Okay. Trustee Gibson.
Aye.
Okay. And an aye for me, and the motion carries. All right. Let's go to the next one. Okay. The next one is Board Policy 3300, which is entitled Public Records, which for me triggers the term Public Records Act, but this is not a Public Records Act policy. So the PRA is a separate administrative procedure, but it looks as though that PRA should be read in conjunction with BP 3300 is my understanding. And I would just like to ask Crystal, what prompted well, first of all, is this a proposed policy? And if not, what prompted any proposed revision to this?
No, this is a current policy, which is why it's review only, and we're not recommending any changes to the policy. We did make some revisions to the AP. It hadn't been reviewed since 2009, and the league had sent out some new template language. So I took that and incorporated it into and revised the AP and brought it to the governance process.
Oh, is when you refer to AP, are you saying that you revised the Public Records Act by administrative procedure?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, which is, if you read the BP says we'll have administrative procedures for records management, including access by the public consistent with the requirements of the California Public Records Act. So the AP outlines how we'll do that.
I see. Okay. So this is a current policy, right?
It's a current policy that really doesn't need any language changes. So it's just, but since we haven't actually looked at it since 2009, we're not making any recommended changes to the policy language because it doesn't really need it.
Uh-huh. I see. Well, I was reading this one sentence and I was a little bit confused as to what it means. Hold on. Because I read it and it says the superintendent president, and I was going to use the add in there and/or designee so that the superintendent can delegate this duty to another administrator. Says shall establish administrative procedures for records management. In my mind, you already have that authority to manage the records. I'm just wondering why you need a separate policy. The superintendent and his or her designee already has the authority to manage records in the institution. So I don't see why there's a need for a policy.
Well, the policy really just states that we'll have administrative procedures that folks can access and follow. on how we do records management and how they can access public records.
Oh, I see.
So
I
this is
got
the
it.
board saying
got it.
to, yeah, the SP, you need to have administrative procedures in place for records management and access to public records.
I get you. Okay, I see. So maybe it should read that in enforcing all federal and state laws in relation to access to public records, including but not limited to the Public Records Act, FERPA, HIPAA, or any other documents accessible pursuant to law, the superintendent/president and/or designee is granted the ability to establish administrative procedures to execute same. Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, that was very complicated. I thought mine was much simpler, but if that's what you want to say, that's fine.
I
Just send me
mean,
the
I
language.
think, can't we assume that whatever she develops needs to be legal within the law?
We like legal.
I mean, I kind of assume for anything, any AP she's doing, that it needs to conform to the law without us telling her that in a board policy.
Right, that's what I was thinking. And also, if there's HIPAA already has mandates and FERPA already has mandates in there. And of course, the PRA, it already has boundaries built into the law. And I think the institution can write administrative procedures to help with the process as to how one makes the request, as long as it doesn't violate the federal and state laws on access to documents. But I don't think we should add in or restrict the laws, because now there's that potential that we would violate the PRA, FERPA, and HIPAA, or the education code. That's my concern.
So I'm happy to leave it exactly like it is. And I'm also happy to not have a policy at all, because with me, less is more. So,
Right.
but, and it seems to me that it's about as simple as it can be. You're going to have procedures. And we assume safely that they will comply with all laws.
Right. Well, I think that the sentence is not clear. Now that Crystal explained it, I understand why you want this here, or the purpose. I think it needs to be rephrased as the superintendent, president, and/or designee may promulgate administrative procedures to administer all federal and state laws relating to access to records. But I'm reading our board policy here, 2410, and it does say that the board reserves the right to direct revisions of the administrative procedures should they, in the board's judgment, be inconsistent with the board's own policies. So you can write an AP, but if it turns out that the AP violates the law or violates policy, we would need to revise the administrative procedure. Is that?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's correct.
And we're very
And-
careful about that.
And my only slight interpretation of what you just said is, I don't think we rewrite the AP, but I think we could direct the administration to rewrite the AP until it's an AP that we approve. So,
Or that doesn't violate the law.
correct. I mean, I'm just making a subtle point here. It's kind of like the judicial side of the board, that we don't go in and write APs, because that would be micromanaging and have accreditation issues. But we certainly can see an AP, and if we have issues with it, bring them up to the superintendent president and ask the superintendent president to rewrite it. That's all. It's not we don't need to discuss it anymore. I'm just kind of making a subtle point while I can.
Okay. Trustee Gibson, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm fine with the policy, and I think I'm fine with the revisions that you're suggesting. So I'm I'm fine with minor adjustments to this policy and then having this policy.
Trustee Chan?
Yes, I agree with the adjustments and changes.
How about this proposed language? The superintendent, president, and slash or designee shall promulgate administrative procedures for access to records to the extent permitted by law. Crystal?
Oh. I usually
I
don't
knew you
weigh
were
in
paying
on these.
attention.
I'll accept whatever you want. I will say that the word promulgate is very legalistic, and there's going to be a percentage that won't understand that. We've been trying to simplify our language a little bit.
Well, you know, I'm glad you raised that, because when I first looked at the word establish, that sounded a little bit vague. So I thought promulgate would better define what you're trying to accomplish, but you can also change it to right.
That's what I was thinking.
There you go.
Right works for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you want to send me that language, I'll make the adjustments and send this back to you.
I will email you that language if I can remember it after this
Oh,
meeting.
We have a recording, so I can always go back in and listen to it.
So it'll sound like this. Here's the superintendent slash president and slash or designee shall write administrative procedures for access to records to the extent permitted by law.
Okay.
So should I send you the draft in an email and then you bring it back to the committee at another meeting?
Sure.
Okay, all right. That sounds good. Okay, all right. Right. Okay. Is everyone fine with that? Okay. Do we need to make a motion on that? Okay. Who wants to make that motion?
I will so move.
Okay, I'll second. All right. Trustee Martin,
Aye.
Trustee Chan,
Aye.
Trustee Gibson,
I
and an aye for me, motion carries. Let's see. Okay. Let's go to the next item. Board Policy 5700 Athletics. Okay. Crystal, can you give just a little bit of background as to the purpose, what prompted revisions to this policy?
Well, there was a couple things. First of all, the name of the organization for athletics in the state of California has changed. It's not the California Association of Community College Commission on Athletics anymore. It's the California Community College Athletic Association and their standards. And also, probably for us, the biggest thing came in the administrative procedure where we had to address name, image, and likeness. And that's really what was we had actually reviewed this fairly recently, but because of name, image, and likeness and that Supreme Court decision, we had to make some pretty substantial changes to the AP. So we went ahead and did the BP since we had the wrong titles.
I see. Okay.
Can you keep scrolling, Crystal? Oh, is that it?
That's it.
Oh, okay.
I only had 2 comments on this one, and right in the middle of the first paragraph, you use the word conference, but it doesn't refer to any particular conference, but I have a feeling you're referring to the CCCAA conference. So somewhere in this policy, you should probably reference somewhere that that's what you're referring to, so you can use the generic term conference, and then we know what you're referring to throughout the document.
I think it might be referring actually to the South Coast Conference rules, because each conference, the state is broken up into 10 conferences, and then there are individual organizations by sport. And so I think that's why it just says conference, because there are various conferences. Not all of the sports fall into the same conference. So there's like the Southern California Football Association and the Northern California Football Association. Those are two different conferences, but then there's a different conference for basketball and there's a different conference. So that's why it's generic, because it might be referring to the regional conference. It might be referring to a sports-based conference or an organizational one.
Is there a more general, is there a name to reference all of those conferences so that when someone reads this, they don't know what we're referring to?
Because it could be a whole host of them. But if you're involved in athletics and you go to the California Community College Athletic Association standards and their constitution and bylaws, it's all spelled out about conferences. And there's actually, like, it's an actual process to, quote, reconference a sport or reconference a college. And so that's why there isn't just one, and it could change. It could change if a sport got reconferenced into another area. So that's why it's just conferences. My hunch is that somebody looking at this policy would be more interested in the AP, because what happens with the conference is really going to be related to what happens with the 3C2A constitution and bylaws.
Then I think we should just put a qualifying word such as applicable.
Okay.
Oh, sure. Got it. I just want for clarification. I actually send this one down to the athletic director for the college, and they did the revisions for me. I'm not an expert I love sports, but I'm not an expert. So I send it down to the athletic director to do the revisions.
Oh, okay. Well, they did a good job. Yeah, maybe just put the term applicable, and then, as Erica was saying, then the reader will be able to have an idea that there is an entire body of other groups out there, and it's not just a generic term. Otherwise, it's vague the way it is.
I know, I think that's great. I'll add that in.
And then in the last paragraph where they added in the word federal and laws, it should be plural with an S.
Okay, got it.
I also had a question as to bylaws. They're referring to bylaws, but I didn't know what bylaws they were talking.
They're referring to the 3C2A constitution there's a constitution, and then there's a separate bylaws.
Right.
There are separate sports championship handbooks, and then appropriate conference constitutions regarding that. That's why it's all, so they all are modifying the 3C2A, because they all stem from that.
I see. So I think we should probably insert applicable there too, so people know that there's another body of different bylaws out there. Because if you just use the term on its own, it appears to reference a single document and not anything else. But it sounds to me there's a whole library.
What I would recommend is actually, instead of doing applicable, have a conjunction there and say the California Community College Athletic Association Constitution and bylaws, comma, sports championship handbooks, comma, and appropriate conference constitution, because it's really the constitution and the bylaws are actually in a single document. It's
Oh.
just that they're articulated out because there are, just with their own constitution, right? We have the constitution and the bylaws or the amendments to it. So that's, I would say, an and instead of applicable.
That actually sounds much better. Let's do that. I like that. That's
Okay.
good. Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question? Because I want to try to get the language as consistent as possible. So where it says appropriate conference constitution, is this the same as in the paragraph, the first paragraph, where it's different conferences?
I think it would be applicable instead of appropriate because we're
Okay.
yes, because the conference is going to be sports driven.
Mhm.
So applicable would be better there instead
Okay.
of appropriate.
Okay, so I'll change them so they're
Yeah.
parallel.
Mhm.
Got it.
One last little change. In that document, it refers to district with the lower level D. So I assume it's referring to our district. If we can just initial cap that D.
Sure.
Mm.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Any comments, Trustee Martin,
No,
Trustee Chan?
Nothing.
Okay, Trustee Gibson.
Looks good.
Okay, motion to approve board policy. Oh, yes,
I'll make the motion. Sure.
okay,
I'll second.
okay. Trustee Martin,
Aye.
Trustee Chan,
Aye.
Trustee Gibson,
Aye.
and an aye for me, motion carries. Okay,
So
our
what
last,
I'll do with this is I'll make the changes and we'll move this to your February board agenda.
yes, please.
Okay,
Would you be able to prepare some minutes for me so that when I make the announcement, like when I report out, it's condensed into like some draft minutes?
sure. So you know what we discussed here, is that what you're asking?
Yes,
So you can bring it to the full board? Sure.
so I can report out, yes, yes. Okay. You might want to wait for my email to you so that,
Sure.
it's one document. Okay. The last one is board policy 7110, delegation of authority. So you might want to bring it up because I think Trustee Martin said that whatever he can see is on the Zoom.
So this is a new board policy that Human Resources has asked me to bring forward. And what they would like the ability to do is have the superintendent president hire classified personnel, fixed job responsibilities, perform other personnel actions. And that they come to the board as a ratify. The reason they're asking for this is because we're having some difficulty employing classified personnel on a timely basis because the job market is so tight right now. We're losing folks. By the time we offer them the job and by the time they get board reported, we're losing them and they're taking other jobs. So we're asking, so HR is hoping that the board would consider letting the superintendent, president, or designee hire the classified personnel and then report out to the board as a ratified. And it would just be classified personnel.
Okay. Any comments?
It's good to me.
Yeah, I have a
But
question.
whatever.
Yeah, I have a question. So I looked at the AP and saw the procedures there. So does that mean those those procedures would no longer be followed with the classified?
Oh, you mean in terms of hiring?
No.
Yes. The
Oh, no,
classified hiring.
I don't think that's the intention. I think the intention is to follow those procedures, but in the event that, but there's a long time, like if somebody gets hired, let's say next Thursday, a classified job committee finishes hiring, they offer the job to somebody next Thursday, that person can't start until February 16th because they won't be approved by the board until the February 15th board meeting. So there might be some folks who would follow that procedure as it's written, but then there might be some folks who start before the next board meeting simply because there might be too much time in between. Have I said that correctly, Crystal?
Yes, but we're kind of talking about two different things, sort of.
Okay.
There is actually no AP for this one yet, because we didn't think we needed one, because we're just asking authority for the superintendent president to hire and then the board to ratify. The actual hiring process for classified employees, there's no change. And no change to the board policy, which is 7230 classified hiring. So we're not making changes to either of those or how they're hired or how we bring them on board. It's just asking that we have the ability to offer them and hire them and then have the board ratify, as opposed to waiting possibly a month or more to bring that person on. Because sometimes we really, I mean, like right now we're trying to hire 7 custodians and that takes time. And we would like to be able to offer them the job and start them. Otherwise, we would have to wait for the board to approve. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And if you look at the board policy 2200, first of all, this authority to hire is coming from Ed Code 70902, subdivision D, which is one section of a very long section in the education code regarding the duties and responsibilities of governing boards. And in that section, in section A4 of the Ed Code, it does say that the Board of Governors employ and assign all personnel, and that's a non-delegable duty. And actually, our board policy 2200 already encompasses Ed Code 70902, and it already has a section that authorizes or that delegates some of these responsibilities to the superintendent. It's just written in a more general fashion, which I think is very appropriate. I think this might be a catch-22 that we really need to think about and to be creative as to what to do, because if you allow an employee to start work before the board ratifies the employment, I think it violates the education code, because ultimately it's the board that employs, and I want to be careful about that.
Do you know offhand, Trustee Kwong, how multi-college districts do it? Because in the 2 I've been in, there are personnel actions where it is delegated to the chancellor or the vice chancellor. So do you know of any way that that's possible? Because that was my experience in the last 2 districts, but it sounds like that's not your sense.
You know what? Let me ask around. I will ask.
Because I don't know. I asked the same thing when I got to like LACCD. You have 9 colleges. How do you keep track of, you know, when people get hired, when they can start work and all of that? And my understanding was, with the exception of faculty and managers, they did it through delegated authority to get people started with a ratify to the board. And there's like a list of personnel actions. That was also the case in the Ventura district. So I'd be interested to know how those 2 districts are able to do it. Maybe it's a multi-college district thing, I don't know. But that was my experience there. And
Sure.
so I don't know.
Well, you know, I can ask around. It's also quite possible that people just don't comply.
It's possible, yeah.
Right. And there hasn't been a problem. It hasn't been problematic. The only time it could be problematic is if you put the hiring for ratification on the consent calendar, and then you have a board that doesn't ratify, and then now you have to terminate somebody, but in reality, they were never even hired in the first place. And then they started performing services, and then it becomes an issue as to how to unwrangle that. That's the thing I'm concerned about. I mean, generally speaking, the things, you make a conditional offer of employment, but I think your issue is more about timing. People know
Yeah.
that offers are always conditional, but you want them started right away because it's a recruitment issue.
Right, it is definitely a timing issue.
Okay. You know what? Let me ask around and see
Mhm.
what the practice is, and then
Yeah, how they reconcile that with.
yeah,
the
let me,
interim.
yes. Yeah, I'll look into it.
Okay,
Okay, and so we can table this and we'll bring it up again.
yeah.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question. Do you do your hirings? I mean, you're referring to classifieds. So are they hired through a committee, or is it
Mhm.
you're taking applications as
No,
the
they're
need?
hired through, they're hired through a committee. Yeah,
Oh, okay. And for example, if you're hiring somebody for M&O, does the department head tell you, hey, I see a need coming up for a groundskeeper. Can you start recruitment? Or do they say we needed this person yesterday?
well, Crystal, do you want, look like you were gonna say something?
Well, there's a process. They have to request the positions have to be approved all the way up, because we have to ensure that the money is in place.
Mhm.
So usually we're looking at replacing a position, and if it's a new position, then the money has to be identified. And then also we have a process for establishing who's going to be on a hiring committee. So even that process alone, for example, I'm in the process of hiring a classified personnel. It'll take me 2 months to go through the process, just to get to the
Oh.
hiring part because I have to do an internal fly of the job opening, then I have to do an external fly of the job opening. And then the applications have to be reviewed by HR, and then we have to review the applications in the hiring committee, and then we have a composite meeting, we develop questions, and then we actually do the hiring. That process alone can take 2 months. So folks have already put in their applications and they've waited almost 2 months sometimes to hear from us.
So on your end of the pond, it's about 2 months. And then with the board action, that could be another 3
That could make
weeks.
another month.
So it's 3 months. So that's where yeah, okay.
Mhm.
I hear you. Okay.
And in order for a position to get advertised, we do have this internal system called NeoEd. So as Crystal said, it goes through all of the steps, and I'm the final approver at the end of every position in NeoEd, both permanent as well as part-time.
I see. Okay. All right.
We've got a really good process in place for vetting people. It's just that once we've decided, it just takes so long to actually bring them on board.
Mhm.
Well, your worst case scenario is that we call a special meeting.
Correct. Well, that's not a bad scenario, actually.
It's not a bad scenario. It's a scenario that maybe I'm going to create some enemies on board. But if that's what we have to do, to get people on board, it's an easy solution.
Well, you could also decide that you're going to meet twice a month.
Okay, let's not go there.
Well, I don't know. That's another option.
How often are you hiring throughout the year?
Yeah, we
Oh,
hire
yeah.
all year. We're not a personnel commission, and so
Sure.
so we have flexibility. We hire it the entire year. Always have positions open.
So there's onboarding a few people here and there throughout the,
Mhm.
right. Okay. All right. All right. Any comments, Trustee Martin?
I don't know all the legal, but conceptually, in my, 40 plus some odd years, I've never heard anybody contest a janitorial hire. So back to what Erica expressed for her previous districts, works, other than managers and maybe faculty, works really well for me. I don't know why we need to go through contortions for that. Obviously, for higher level positions and maybe faculty that we always say are $1 million hires, and et cetera,
Mhm.
that would make a lot of sense. the thing that may or may not need a review is positions. If you're going to add or add new positions, which is usually what goes through the budget. But that would obviously need board approval. But once they're a position and it's open and it's that level in an organization that's putting $250 million or through in an annual basis, to call a special board meeting to hire, it just doesn't make sense to me. But
Okay. Trustee Chan?
I am fairly distant from the hiring process, so I'm just concerned about like possibly the legal process, like said. But if other districts are doing it, then I think we should get back to it and see like how they are working their system.
Yeah, because I don't
Yeah.
know. That's a great question.
I will look into it.
Mhm.
Yes, and I'll get back to you. Okay. All right, so we'll table this for now, subject to bringing it back at another meeting.
Great.
All right, so item number 6, we have 7 minutes.
I'll be quick. So it's your accreditation update. So I just wanted to run through a few things for clarification because I keep hearing these conflicting storylines about our last full review, which was in spring of 2021. And I just want to be clear that in spring of 2021, PCC was granted full reaffirmation with only one recommendation to improve quality. And that was actually something we had already identified in our self-study. And I want to say that that is like, and I know Trustee Martin knows this, that is the first time in 18 years and 4 cycles that we have only had one recommendation and no sanctions. So I think that's pretty amazing. It was a very clean accreditation site visit, and we're kind of proud of that. Second, we are in the process of drafting what's known as a substantive change request because the college is putting forth a proposal to offer a Bachelor of Science in Stem Cell and Gene Technologies. And that we put the proposal into the chancellor's office, but we have to put in what's called a substantive change request to ACCJC. So we're working on that. Our next review cycle, we got the information on that. 2 things. First of all, there will be new standards. So we'll be going from somewhere around 128 standards down to 54 standards, which means that our ICER will go from like 350 pages down to like 50 or 100 pages. Everybody say hallelujah, because that's a lot of reading. So our next full review is going to be in our full with a visit is in spring 2028. So it's a little longer cycle this time. So what we do is what I do as the ALO is I work back from that, which means that we'll actually start writing our self-study in fall of 2025. And then we'll take it through the governance process in spring of 2027. And then we will submit it to the commission by August 1st of 2027 in order for the site team to read it in the fall and to do our spring visit. Yeah, I know it's complicated.
Perfect.
But so everybody understands, every time people read an ICER, they're like, this is such old information, and that's true because of the timeline leading up to writing it.
That's great. That's great.
And then just the last thing is I'm still in the process of identifying a faculty accreditation coordinator. But this semester, Dr. Jennifer Feibig from Social Sciences, she's a social science faculty member. She's going to be working with me because we're going to be working on specifically the recommendation we had for learning outcomes disaggregation. And she's working on the implementation of the new software for that.
Oh. Is that a new position or an existing position that's trying to be filled?
It's an existing position. It was held by Dr. Thea Alvarado, who's now our Dean of Social Sciences. She did it with me. She was a faculty member at the time. So during the 2021 cycle, she was the FAC, but now she's a dean. God bless her. And Jennifer has asked to step into the position, but we have a hiring process for that. So she's going to apply and go through the process.
Got it.
Okay.
Yep, it does. Yeah.
I
Any,
have to tell you though, there's not a lot of people that apply.
well, it's,
It's a thankless job, so.
it's a intellectual job. I hear that. It's a compliance job.
Yep.
Yep. You know, there is one thing I like to bring up at a next meeting for policy review, and it's not a rush, but the Brown Act there's been some amendments to the Brown Act. There's this one amendment that deals with how to respond to disruptive behavior. And I just noticed on our website, we do have a policy on dealing with disruptive behavior. And I just want to make sure that the amendment to the Brown Act is consistent. Our policy is consistent to the new amendment, so it stays in compliance.
Sure.
And perhaps maybe Crystal, if you can, just have a little
I'll find that.
checkoff list or something. And then also there's been some amendments to the Brown Act regarding remote meetings, adding 2 new different categories for remote meetings after the pandemic is over. And I don't know if you want to amend our meetings to add all that because it is a lot of detail, but it's just something for you to think about.
Okay. I will look at what we have.
Are the amendments things that will impact how we run meetings or how we schedule them? Is that? But
The amendments,
long?
the amendments don't impact how we schedule meetings, but they've now, well, first of all, the way we're doing this emergency remote meetings was only during a declared pandemic.
Mhm.
And the pandemic will be declared over on February 28th.
Okay. Yeah.
As the last time I checked, it was February 28th. So let's see
Okay.
what the governor does closer to the 28th.
I just
And
wish
then-
they would have declared it over a year ago
Well, I
and
know.
had it all just go away by declaration.
Well-
It's all gonna go away. We've declared it.
You know what, Trustee Mark, physically,
Yeah,
I've never
but anyway.
seen the virus before, but I hear it exists. But what they did was when they amended the Brown Act, they gave 2 categories of how to do virtual meetings. And there are certain qualifications on how to do the virtual meeting, but then they still want to keep the 3rd category of the regular virtual meeting. So basically there's going to be 3 categories of how you can appear virtually. I'm a little bit concerned about our committee meetings because generally for a Brown Act meeting, a quorum has to be live in the district territory. So
Yeah.
that might, yes, it might change
Impact it.
lives. It'll impact it, yes.
Great.
So we'll flesh it out later.
All right. So
Okay.
it's I just want to say it's 3:00 and there's another committee meeting that Armina needs to go take notice for and that we
Yes.
need to go to.
Okay, I'll see you there. All
Okay.
right, anything further? You would propose anything next time? Okay.
Thank
All right,
you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.